Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's go. Let's go, everybody. Let's go. Good morning.
H-O-F.
Personal foul. Clipping.
All I can say is, wow.
It's a covenant cleanup.
NFL Combine Day 2 from Indianapolis is in the air, and welcome to the Indianapolis Convention Center. And I'm Paul Allen, joined by Pete Bursich, analyst for the vast and ever-expanding Minnesota Vikings radio network. We have a cavalcade of National Football League luminaries joining us today, and we begin with some local motion. Alec Lewis with The Athletic is here covering the NFL Scouting Combine. At Alec_Lewis is how you follow him via the tweet machine if you are so inclined. And we welcome Alec into the presentation now. How overstimulated are you?
I mean, I am overstimulated for sure. But first, before we start, I mean, they gave you the best booth in the house.
You think so?
Yeah, you walk in the radio row, and you are the first booth that you have to see.
We get to see all of the NFL luminaries rolling in the doors that we ask them to join, and generally speaking, they're looking at their phones and walking into people and declining. So it's a wonderful perch.
Howie Roseman walks in.
Yeah.
You guys dap up. I mean, it's you can get whatever you want at this spot. But I'm not surprised.
It's a good spot.
Yeah, it is a great spot. No, I'm not over. Are you overstimulated?
Well, we had the opportunity to start the show today with Howie Roseman, who you saw me dap up, GM for the Eagles, Brett Veach, GM for the Kansas City Chiefs, Rick Spielman, now a consultant with the New York Jets. But we opted to start with you.
Well,
we like the local motion.
I was going to say, you like tweeted out, like, this is going to be the show today, and it's me and then Kwesi. Like, it should probably be Kwesi and then I talk, just because one of us.
You just go in order.
Okay.
Because the people listening,
right,
if they want to tune in to hear you, then they know they got to be here for the first segment.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
That's fair.
Right. Yeah, it's how it is.
Right. But, I mean, look.
Are you trying to say you should be top billing?
No, I'm saying I
think
definitely
that's what he's saying.
No. The point is I definitely should be last billing. Like, that's where I think I lie in the spectrum.
Right. So like a concert. Right. If KISS is the headline group,
point.
then
you're
out. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So
yeah, this is the little side stage, like when people walk in.
Exactly.
But that's cool. I mean, coming up later, you can organize it however you want. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah follows you. Former Vikings coach Leslie Frazier joins us today. Former Vikings offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski, two-time NFL Coach of the Year. He's on the radio show. Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals. He'll join. Fellow scribe Ben Gessling, he will join. And I guess in laying it out in concert stage-like fashion, it worked out fine because Courtney Cronin is our final on-site guest.
There you go, the headliner.
By attending the Women in the Media event last night, Pete and I stopped by. She's the belle of the ball. I mean, that thing was packed last night, and everybody was having a good time. And yeah, so she gets the big stage today.
Totally makes sense. She works.
Why didn't you come?
There were a lot of meetings. I was in and out conversations. You know, Tom Condon. Courtney being the last.
Last act.
Yeah, the last act. That's great. It makes sense. She's worked her butt off. She does a great job.
Do you read all the NFL stories at The Athletic?
No.
Because I read your story about Sam Darnold, and we're going to get into that momentarily. But
I don't even read the ones he writes.
But when I fired up The Athletic, theathletic.com, subscribe if you are so inclined, I haven't read Mike Sando's story beyond the Sean McVay effect inside the coaching youth revelation that reshaped the NFL. There's a picture of Brad Childress. Brad Childress on the dynamic lead of The Athletic. What's happening here?
Yeah, I'm not our graphics department. I only just write about the Vikings and try to act like I know what I'm talking about with the Vikings. But it's probably, if in the picture that I'm looking at, it's McVay in the front, so it's kind of Childress in the background, the evolution toward McVay. That's probably what the attempt was from our graphic department, but I'll have to reach out.
Who's my man in the back? In the maroon shirt. I mean,
I don't know.
Looks like
Doug
talent
Marone.
coach Jerry Maladon.
I don't know who that is. I mean, am I supposed to know who that
Made
is?
everybody at the VEN smile.
No,
they all got it.
You just laugh. That's all you do.
But with Sam Darnold, let's get serious for a second.
Okay.
It's the people are formulating massive opinions on social media, not surprisingly, about, hey, if the Vikings don't do this with the franchise tag, it's organizational malpractice. Which is a little strong, or if the Vikings just let Sam Darnold become a free agent and leave and have compensatory pick terrorism, stuff like that. Well, that's in there too. So, like, for those who didn't see your story, what's it about and what's your take on Sam, and good morning?
Yeah, I mean, the story
morning.
good morning. Great to see you.
You too,
Pete.
Robert Mays.
The story that I wrote yesterday was essentially, unless the price for Sam Darnold falls well below, I think, what the entire NFL media, league personnel expectation is, then it doesn't make sense for the Vikings to re-sign Sam Darnold because of the amount of needs they have to fill everywhere else. It's not a crazy take from me, but I think it's just pretty obvious that there is a pretty clear marker in terms of a price tag for Sam Darnold that if it rises to that level, the Vikings can't do what they want to do, which is fortify the trenches, probably do something with the running back position. We're going to have conversation about what the cornerback position looks like. So that was the story. But yeah, I mean, the Sam Darnold conversation of they have to tag and trade him or it's malpractice. Like, the part that people don't talk about within that is another team has to be willing to trade a premium draft pick.
Yeah.
And across the NFL, over the last probably 3 years that I've covered the league, at least, it has seemingly become less common for teams to be willing to part with very premium picks for players. It just doesn't happen all the time.
Why does it have to be a premium pick?
It depends on the level of which that you tag him. Exclusive, then it's 2 first-rounders. There's 3.
Yeah, but
three
they would
different
tag
levels.
him. It would be 40, like 40-ish million for a year.
It'd be average of the top 10. It depends on what level you tag him.
Okay, well, therefore, you no longer have to deal with whatever the price is, and you get at something, if anything, in return.
No, it doesn't have to be a premium pick. I guess my point is I'm trying to set the expectation that if there is a tag and trade, the pick is probably not a first or second rounder. It might, I mean, who knows? Could you get a third rounder for Sam Darnold? Could you get a fourth rounder? And I think with this team having only 4 picks for this upcoming draft, adding a fourth rounder now as opposed to a third round comp pick later is a move that I think you have to do. So I'm in alignment with people who think the tag and trade makes sense. But we're wading into it's such jargon with tag and trade, comp pick. I mean, it becomes
it's
kind of
Brzezinski territory.
Tedious.
Yeah. But just quickly, you don't tag and trade unless you're at the combine and you have a sneaky handshake that it's going to work.
That's what this entire week is. And I've said this on the show before with you. But, like, there's the tampering rules, and you act like nobody can talk to anybody. But literally, in the hotel that's like 100 yards away, there are teams meeting with a lot of people, other teams, agents, and they have a very good feel going into free agency, what they should do, what they can do, and that's why this week is very important. It's also why right now the conversation is a lot of speculation because these conversations are just now happening, probably as we're speaking right now.
So along those lines, what was interesting is you read The Athletic going into the combine, and you guys have Darnold listed as the number 8 free agent. Now, you hear people here talk about how he's the number 1 free agent, and that's a huge difference. Yeah. If he's the belle of the ball of this free agent class, mainly because of his position, then the tag makes more sense. If he's the guy, this free. I mean, and my question to you is, what are you hearing as far as where does Darnold fall with this crop of free agents?
Yeah, it's a great question because to your point, like I saw the Athletics free agent list and I thought the same thing. Like, is that too low for a guy that I've seen other places say he is?
I think just by position, by position alone, he should be
positional
up
value.
on top. Right.
But the interesting thing is when you talk to people across the league about Sam, I mean, you hear a lot of different. Like, would you buy? Like, they will ask me questions of like, do you believe he could do what he did from weeks 4 to 16, or do you think he's more what he was the last 2 games of the season? And it's hard for me to really answer those questions. I think the hard part for other teams is trying to separate what was Sam Darnold's production? How much of that was a byproduct of the infrastructure around them versus who he is? And that question is in the eye of the beholder and what they see on film and what their team thinks. Like, I'll bring up the Las Vegas Raiders because that's the popular team if you talk to people in the industry in terms of where they think Sam Darnold could
they're right
go.
over there. You can go talk to them after when we're done here.
But I mean, they have like $100 million in cap space, so they could franchise tag Sam, pay him $40 million, and give him a year to see how it works out. There's a lot of
there's a lot of talk about that because of Pete Carroll, right? And because he's 72 now, 73. So his window from and can they get up high enough to get the quarterback that they want, and then say, are we in a 4-year window here with a rookie quarterback, or do we bring in a Darnold who is 28 now?
Yeah,
he has a few teams under his belt. He played it's a much quicker road, I guess is my point, to bring in a guy like Darnold to get quality play at a position where have not had quality play in a long time. He'd be an unbelievable upgrade at that position there.
And their new GM, I don't know, I can't remember his name.
John Spytek.
Basically savaged at that podium yesterday behind us the current quarterback situation for the Raiders. I mean, he could not have made it sound more dire.
He's setting the table for the 40, 80, 60 million he's going to spend on Darnold.
Right. The hard part about this stuff is, like, it's almost like dominoes to fall. It's like Matthew Stafford and the Rams there's a situation there that they're trying to sort through, and it's been reported by like Tom Pelissero and others that Stafford's agent has received the opportunity to go gauge teams in terms of the market. And so, like, until these dominoes start to fall, and I think if you were to rank like the available quarterbacks, and if Stafford's one of them, then he rises to the top.
What are you paying
list.
A year for Stafford? What's his contract coming up?
I mean, it's a great question. It depends probably on your team, to where your team is. If I think I have a championship-ready team and I have $50 million of cap space that I can allocate to Stafford.
And how many of those are out there? I mean, that's just kind of like, I don't know. I'm not asking rhetorically. I'm just saying there aren't a lot of people sitting on $50 million or $60 million this year without with all that cap room to say, hey, we're just a quarterback away.
No question. But like the New York Giants, for example, they're not just a quarterback away.
Well, here's how I think I parse it out to say who needs to win quickly.
Well,
the Giants
exactly
need to win quickly. That the GM and the head coach there,
yes,
they got to turn things around now, yesterday. And I mean, if you're looking at the difference between Stafford and Darnold, Stafford in the middle of the season with the Rams did not look very good at all. He was getting the pressure on him, and he's just getting rid of the football. The week before we played them, he had the worst week of his career. He looked awful.
Yeah.
And then he comes out, obviously, against us on Thursday night and fires bullets all over the place because he's got Puka Nacua back and Kupp. Well, if you're the Giants, you're saying Darnold. I'm just saying, with the way the season went. I'm kind of, in what I'm hearing from people, I think the value for Darnold is really up there.
Right.
It really is.
The desire for teams to at least investigate it and bring him in, for sure. Yeah, we heard a lot of that yesterday. All right, just a couple more here for Alec Lewis with The Athletic, theathletic.com. Do you think just either share what you have steam-wise or your discernment? Do you think the Vikings would have any interest in Stephon Diggs in free agency? I didn't catch a rumor yesterday, but I just heard some people talking about Steph and like places he may be going and stuff. So
no, that would be way beyond. Yeah. No, I haven't heard anything remotely close to that. I just think and why I say that is the priority of needs are interior offensive line, interior defensive line, running back, cornerback, and then we'll see what happens with the safety room. And I just think, while they could use a receiver who can insert and block in the run game, because the two guys who are incredible players they have are not run blocking receivers, I just don't. That'd be a tough one for me right now.
Are you sensing the guard for Kansas City, Trey Smith, that everybody was talking about up to the Super Bowl? He had a rough game in the Super Bowl, but those Eagles interior guys put rough games on a lot of people for a lot of games. Do you sense his value or his price has decreased, or maybe the interest level has decreased a little bit, not only locally, but maybe nationally?
No, I think the interest level is going to be there. And the question, it's kind of like Christian Wilkins last year as a free agent, where I do think the Vikings were interested in Christian Wilkins, and there was obviously the relationship between him and Brian Flores, but the market for him just got to such a level to where the Raiders ultimately made that happen for an incredible amount of money. And so the question with Trey Smith, I think the Bears are going to be in on Trey Smith. I really do.
Yeah.
The Chiefs and Brett Veach yesterday, I was listening to him. He talked optimistically about bringing him back. Now, I don't know how realistic that is, or that's just his conversation, but the competitiveness for Trey Smith, a guy who has played 16 games a year, a guy who's still 25 years old, a guy who can play one-on-one against Jalen Carter and at least put up a fight. The question for me is, how far does that market go, and how willing are the Vikings for the Vikings, how willing are they to go up to that market? And I think there's probably a number that it hits. It's just it just doesn't make sense for us. So
now Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is general manager for the Vikings. We recorded an interview with him yesterday. We'll play that back coming up. And I didn't ask him this because I just thought of it. Travis Kelce with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs made it available to the media, then subsequently the public with Kelce. Here's the date, okay, the March whatever. We need to know by then whether you're in or you're out. Do you think the Vikings privately have maybe done something like that with Harrison Smith? Where it's kind of like low-key with a handshake or a fist bump. Hey, man, if you could let us know by this date whether you're in or out, that would really help us.
Well, contractually, the way his contract is structured is very interesting. And, like, I know people have talked about it, but this gets into the very nitty-gritty. But it's almost set up to where if they are to cut him, it would probably be best benefit the team to do it as a post-June cut. Mm-hmm. So the team would have to know what his plans are to then decide how they want to operate from a cut perspective. So it's probably like around that.
I'm thinking about him retiring. I'm talking about retirement.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is that, like, the date of when they have to make that decision on how to manage his contract is probably the date at which they know. But I'll just tell you from what I've heard, like, I really wouldn't be surprised if Harrison is back playing another year.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Alec Lewis starting day 2 of the Combine from Indianapolis. He's part of the TimberTech What's on Deck set list, which does indeed include Minnesota Vikings general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah around the corner. Kevin Stefanski, coach of the Cleveland Browns. He'll join the show about an hour from now. Likewise for former Minnesota Vikings head coach Leslie Frazier. He'll be on the radio show today, plus much more. Thank you very much for listening to Combine Coverage with Pete Bursich and yours truly, Paul Allen. Not only at KFAN, but you can watch a lot of these interviews back at Vikings.com, courtesy of our friends from the Vikings Entertainment Network. The GM is next on KFAN.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Get down to Tom's Watch Bar in Minneapolis this Sunday to join Bumper to Bumpers Justin Guard for a KFAN Wolves watch party. We'll have Timberwolves vs. Suns live on the big screen. Delicious food, drinks, your chance to secure exclusive KFAN swag, and a chance to qualify for Wolves tickets later this season. All the details, KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, joins us now from Indianapolis and the 2025 National Football League Scouting Combine. First, how are the 2 children, and how's your family doing?
Thank you for asking. They're doing great. It's hard when you leave now. The oldest is getting a little older, so when I leave, he's in the window waving. It's a hard thing to leave. No, they're we all sacrifice in this business for this greater cause. But so happy the minutes I get with them. I got to make more of it. I got to figure out more time. Maybe this a little less sleep, but you don't want to miss these years. They're special to be around.
Secondly, now Demetrius Washington. All right, you're vice president of football operations. From traveling with the team and being around the facility, I've gotten to know Demetrius a little bit. But we just sat down with him and taped an interview and really got into what he does and Central Arkansas and the Masters from Missouri and your days, and said, what a wonderful young man he is. What a bright future he has.
He's a unique thinker. He's one of those people, when you get to know him, we used to sit in an office sitting back to back, and, we're talking, doing our job, and then he'll just say something, and you'll be like, that was unbelievable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, love that.
And just... And I really got it from our first phone call. They tell the story about when I interviewed him. It was a phone interview first, and I'm dying laughing, and I think intelligence and humor are pretty related. I don't know that there are many funny people that aren't incredibly intelligent. And so that's when I first got to know what kind of unique thinker he is. And, man, he's done such a great job. I'm proud of him, not just as my vice president, but as the first person I hired in the NFL. I'm just so happy for him. And, man, to your point, you want to build your roster. So I want him to be better than me one day as a GM. That's the point of this.
Yeah.
Because it means he's helping us with the Vikings right now.
Yeah, and it was I tried to run a bit on him, and it's abundantly clear that not only with analytics or technology, that my man's watching some film too, because I'm like, Central Arkansas, okay. I went into it last night prepping for this, going, there ain't going to be anybody at the Combine from there. And then this David Walker, 6'1", 267, edge guy. And I'm like, all right, well, let me look at him last night. And then I watched a couple of highlights. I'm like, damn, he's good. And so then I brought it up joking with Demetrius, and he goes, edge guy, sounded like
quick
I
twitch,
was talking to a draft analyst. Quick twitch, edge guy, big guy, long, like, whoa.
It's what people don't realize is this is football at the end of the day. And so, yeah, that was our background. But how do you hire high-capacity people and say, hey,
use your unique skill set to go watch football now and become multilingual so that you can communicate with scouts and coaches and things like that. And so we started that in San Francisco. Obviously, he's continued on that path. And so he looks at it, and you want to build a room full of people who look at things with different perspectives. And I might use different words or look at different evidence on when I'm watching film, but I learn from Kevin, and I learn from coaches, and I learn from Grigson, and he learns, and we come together as a group. And by the end of it, you got a pretty good thing going. And so it's been really awesome to see him blossom and grow in that way. I wouldn't put literally any job past that guy. He's that talented and that hardworking.
And it has to be difficult when you're trying to change things, meaning you're incorporating data, you're interpreting it differently, and then you sit down and present it to a room full of other guys who've been in this league a long time, and each one of them has their own quote-unquote way of doing things, and you're sitting there saying, hey, we may need to look at this a little bit differently. I would assume that is very difficult to overcome, but you have to have, I would assume, the right people who are willing to do that, because I'm sure a lot of guys won't.
100%. And Demetrius, honestly, when we talk about our days back in San Francisco, there's times I feel like when I talk, I was joking over there, sometimes I can't hide the nerd. It'll just come out, and in environments it doesn't need to come out. But he's so good. I don't know if it's the charm or whatever, which is talking with coaches, and he'll explain the same idea I've had, and with the coaches, and they'll be like, oh, that's all you were saying? I'll be like, yeah. And so really in San Francisco, once I realized he was so good at it, he was the one down there with coaches, with D'Amico and Kyle and Sala, and I would be the draft meeting guy and talking about those team building things, but he was the guy really communicating the scouting reports and different things like that. So he built that relationship from them, and in turn, he got to learn so much from coaches. But part of the reason we're so blessed to be here is because we got to learn from scouts, coaches, when we were providing them, the information that we were giving them. And so that's made it is a challenge, but really, and even me, when I joke about letting the nerd out, people just know I'm well-meaning, and I'm passionate about these ideas, and they've known me long enough to, or maybe ask me to clarify or something like that. Or Kevin speaks a little bit Kwesi now, so he can understand what I'm saying and say it to the room. But Demetrius is uniquely gifted at explaining kind of complex ideas.
You're authentic, and I don't throw that around frequently, but getting to know you behind the scenes, musical proclivities we have, that can be synonymous, and it's kind of like our common thread. And then the work that you're doing as a young general manager who continues to improve. But here, it's your desire to learn is unquenchable. Now that could be a double-edged sword. I mean, and not only, you just said it about your son. He's looking out the window, and I feel sad, and I have to find a way to do a better job to do this. Kevin O'Connell says it a lot, too, after games, and I need to be better, too. That's good to have, but it also can torment the bleep out of somebody, too. You know what I mean?
I kind of, that's, man, I've just, some of the thoughts, conversations I've had with my wife and family and different things like that, I would describe it as somewhat of a torment. But it's that beautiful torment that somebody like me just loves. I've just always been wired to, seek out that discomfort, because everything great in my life has come from that discomfort, and willing to look in a mirror and ask yourself, are you doing good enough, and keep trying, keep getting up off that mountain, and you try to achieve all your goals. But it can be that way. It can be taxing, and you need people in your life to uplift you and support you, like my wife and my mom and RG, and people who just, Kwesi, you're doing great, man. You know, and that's sometimes hard when you're just so trying to learn and trying to get better.
Right. As you had a chance to look back on 2024 and kind of pack it up and put it away, I want to know what your highlights of last year are. I think personally the Cam Robinson move was one of my highlights, especially from your level.
Might have been a season saver.
Yeah, but what is it? What did you take away, and what are your highlights from last season?
Man, I would really just start with the off season. As I think I said at my podium session, we had a decision to make with a player who's been really great for this franchise, a really great quarterback, and the ideas, the conversation, all those conversations, those meetings with Kev, they were just so inspiring. And to see our ideas come to fruition with detailed execution. The names on the board that showed up on free agency were names talked about 2 months ago. quarterbacks talked about 2 years ago from a long, dedicated process. So to see that go to fruition, it just we built this collective just juice together, right? For hey guys, we took a risk, we went on that ledge and we live.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's really what I take from the highlight of that. Just so proud of the group, the ideas that came from it, because it's one thing to be the GM and tell people what to do. It's one thing to sit in a room and have them come to the answer and all look around and be like, we're going to do this. We're a little crazy, but we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And we never blinked. I'm just so proud of that team, and just football moments. You know, it's going to be weird to say this, but the Detroit game, the first Detroit game, where we were started with a lead, they came back and we were down. And just to see this, I'm just so proud to be a part of this team. The way they fought, Metellus punches the fumble and Pace takes it back to the house, and the moments I get to look at Chisholm, who I've known since college, and Demetrius and Grigson, and we're going crazy in the suite, and those will be moments I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And so that's kind of seared in my brain as a highlight moment, and even though the game didn't end up going the way.
Well, I talked to O'Connell about this a little bit, but I'm just going to be direct with it. You know, Sam Darnold's game at Ford Field was bad. Okay, there are components that went into it, but when you watch it back, there could have been 5 touchdowns that were called. The execution was good, and he missed them. Okay, so here's the point, because Sam had an unbelievably good year, is as a leader of the organization, how do you restrain from not taking that moment, which at that moment was by far the biggest moment of the season, and canceling out a lot of good things that have been done over a long period of time?
No, it's the quintessential question, and, and if you look from a data standpoint, you try and look at the whole sample. Do you care if somebody hit 8 3-pointers in a row and then they missed their last 2? They're still 8 of 10. It's a pretty good 3-point game shooting, you know? And so I kind of linked Sam's season to that, and what you're trying to figure out is, do those 2 games mean something? They mean that he can't do something in the end. I don't believe that is such. I think that, to your point, the context around him, and that position's tough. You get to a place where you got to get going. You need something easy, and because of stuff going on around him, we didn't really get anything easy, and didn't really get the offense going. But ultimately, that's really going to be the decision. Do we think that those 2 games are really indicative or meaningful? And then really, how do we put the team around JJ, Sam, whoever is playing quarterback to be in a place to set them up to succeed in the best way possible?
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, general manager for the Minnesota Vikings, from the Indianapolis Scouting Combine.
Well, we from a free agency standpoint, we're set to be able. We have the potential to do quite a bit. Does that change how you guys going into this offseason, or because last year's success with the free agents was second to none. I mean, going into the season, most people, the powers that be, picked us to finish last just because we had so many uncertainties. Now, those guys that you brought in all proved themselves. The whole free agent class was amazing. Now I got to do it again, right? And you have some money. You have some money to play with, so that's got to be something that keeps you going.
No,
right?
absolutely.
You got to be excited about that.
When we got here, we set the plan and path, and whatever term I use for it or whatever. But part of it was to win, build the foundation, win games, compete for the playoffs while restoring cap space, while replenishing some of the players that were Ring of Honor type players that we had to replace. And it's unbelievable. You look up after 3 years, and you're like, "Yo, Kev, we kind of did this." Yeah. We're in a great spot. We got some ability to improve, not just in free agency and the draft, and those are connected things. We're excited about what we know what we need to improve. And I can tell you that what I know about this organization, and when Kevin and I are in charge, that we're going to be intentional about attacking the things we need to get better at. That's not going to just be one thing. We're going to really aggressively attack it because we believe in turning, potential weakness into strength, and that's how we're going to approach the offseason.
And I mean, to circle the proverbial wagons around the quarterback spot the way you guys have, holy cow. I mean, no matter what the future is for Darnold, McCarthy's supposed to be good and was good with what we saw. Daniel Jones has been good. Got a nice little turnout period there to get his mind right, kind of like Darnold had backing up Purdy with San Francisco. Absolutely. Which that's big. I mean, that's big to be able to turn it off for a little while, have people accept that the former first-round pick from Duke, we're going to shut him down for a little bit, let him get his mind right, and then we'll see what happens after that. You had Nick Mullins, who gave you some good moments when he had to play. Brett Rippon, too. For those who watch it as closely as I do at practice, I mean, Brett Rippon looks like he can play. So the importance of having that position circled, fantastic. But wouldn't you concede the draft would be the lifeblood of teams. Free agency, in essence, would be the steroid you pump into the body to amplify and to get the most out of the body, but it may not be sustainable.
I like that. I like that
You know
analogy.
what I'm saying?
I like that analogy. I think, well, really, at the end of the day, there's different ways to skin a cat, and kind of, you want to be in a place where you're about talent acquisition and you're aggressive about it, however you get it. But ultimately, a lot of the lifeblood does need to come from the draft, and a lot of great players are in the draft, and if you don't draft them, you can't get them. They don't. And there's unique ways that a Jonathan Grenard even gets to free agency, partly because they had a young, talented player on their roster already, and maybe potentially gets out. So there's a scarcity even that gets to free agency. Sometimes really unique scenarios that they get out there. So the draft is one place you can control. You get to pull the card and draft the player, and they have to come play for you. And so you always want to make sure that you're mindful of that. And obviously, these first 3 years, we've done it a lot of different ways. I always joke that I want our team building to be like a Noah's Ark philosophy. There's different ways to do it where you can draft players and clear out pathways for them to play. But I believe in building a team built for the 17-game attrition of the NFL season. And so that if somebody gets hurt, I wish you would see what's behind them. And so we're not always going to necessarily have players stepping into roles day one, because that's not necessarily by our design. We want them to. The worst thing you can do to players, have them play too early and then be judged by that, and then that be a negative thing. And so we're trying to build this in such a way that players can grow and develop in the right way. But to your point, we will be about drafting really good players, and we've got a great group. Again, like I said up there, what I've seen is our draft board has gotten better. Just looking back historically at the results, and all that is to see the results is execution, better execution, and then also pathways. Pathways to play where you're not necessarily giving people opportunity to play, but you're doing it in a way that they're at least coming as role players early and then potentially go on from there.
With McCarthy in the injury and being at the facility, let's say October, November, December, and he's getting around on that scooter and he's doing his thing. He's spending Thursdays with Kevin. I know he talked a lot to you. What do you like about him? I mean, the Raiders game, he throws a pick, bounces back beautifully. It's a preseason game, but if there was no bounce back, I'd prefer there to be a bounce back. Training camp, he captured the imagination of the fan base with his gregarious nature, his mobility, his good arm, and it just seems like he's a very authentic kind of guy. Behind the scenes, what are some, in conversations with him, what are some things about J.J. McCarthy that you genuinely love that maybe the listening audience wouldn't know?
I would just start with what you said, the joy, the positivity that is authentic to him. I think you want every player, a lot of your great players to embody your culture. And joy and positivity is one of our core staples. If you talk to Kev and myself when I'm not a little under the weather, but that's just a real thing for him. When he's a joyful. One thing they talked about that preseason game was, man, this guy's having fun out there. Like after the interception, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He is playing. He is joyful playing a football game, and then also just the obsessiveness. I think there's a to your point, there's a hardness that comes with being great, with constantly chasing that next edge, and he's got it.
Yeah.
He wakes up every day trying to be the best version of himself. I gave him a project to do, and the level you're talking about, the level, the standard that he puts himself to, it's unmatched. And so ultimately, that's what we're betting on: the person, the talent, and then the standard he has for himself. The love he has for his teammates, the ability to bring people along with him. We're so happy with him, and we're excited to see the future.
All right, just a couple more for the GM.
And hearing kind of the question before, the prior question before we talking about McCarthy, it makes me see Dallas Turner's rookie year a little differently, right? And because there are some question marks out there, but you're definitely taking a prudent path with him.
Yeah.
How is he doing, and what do you expect out of him this 2025?
He's doing great, and to your point, in our exit meetings, he came, and pass rushers take time. It's one thing that people don't realize: the dark arts of trying to win in that little set point area. It's not easy, and there's some talented people like Christian Darrisaw on the other side trying to keep you from the quarterback. And so we've always known that it takes time, and partly why you want to have people in front that he can come along in the right passion, but. He could see jumps. The play against Chicago where he has the sack. He came in our exit interview and talked about that week of practice, the rep that he knew that play was going to come. And that's kind of how player development happens. It's not clean. It's not always perfect. They don't always come in ready-made or different things like that. But we're excited about the future for him. The game will slow down in year 2. The athletic ability that he has, that God gave him, will show up. We'll start to see more elements of his pass rush. And I also was really happy with the run game demeanor. Like, that's a hard thing to do. Year 1, show up and, different run schemes. In college, maybe a little different, the open side versus the close side or whatever. But, now he's seen that. He's got an off season where it's not based on combine training and different things like that. He's another year in our system, so we're excited about the arrow up for him. We expect him to impact our team.
How with Brian Flores, and he's going for head coaching jobs, and sadly for Brian, who I'm fond of, he didn't get one. But I mean, as a leader of an organization, how do you balance the emotion of that? Because in your heart you want him here, because what happened last year got good. And it's different, and it's hard to be different, specifically in an oversaturated culture and world. But you also want your friend to ascend. Yeah. Like, how do you balance that?
I think you always lead with you want the best for people. And I just truly believe everything happens for a reason. And so for him, just like for me, when I got my first no, that wasn't just the right opportunity for me. And there was a great yes coming in the Minnesota Vikings a year later. So for him, I would pray for him that the yes will come and it'll be the right yes. Yep. And as long as we're together, but let's do the most we can, and when you go, we'll wish you best of luck. We'll see you at the combine.
Lastly, and I brought this up with Demetrius, and I'm kind of obsessed by it. It's because so many things are changing with technology and analytics, and it is a weekly game that's emotional and it's violent, and people get to have personal problems too. That's human nature, and just putting all of that in the metaphorical jambalaya pot, and then playing the game. Now to get there, though, you're drafting. And we're seeing over the last few years so many players that started at Incarnate Word and then went to Maryland and then ended up at South Carolina. So, like, how deeply do you have to get into, all right, I see you got 125 here with NIL and you got 375 there, and that makes sense, okay? Yeah. But was there more to it? Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, because you want, it's success is born of routine.
Right.
And you don't want people jumping all over the place. Yeah. If there were problems, and it's like, the dog in front of me, I knew I was better than him. I got tired of it, so I just quit.
Right.
Well, you don't want that either.
Right.
So, that's such a new dynamic to your job. How do you handle it?
It's a tough dynamic, but it's good because it's really thinking through the what and the why. What happened and why did it happen? And, if you're an Incarnate Word, did you really have a chip on your shoulder? Do you believe that you should be playing with those big guys and you cannot wait to go up that level and show everybody what you're able to do? That's the type of guy you probably want. You want the chip on your shoulder. The guy who maybe ran from competition, if there was a reason where he shouldn't have been competing, maybe that's a different story. So every story is this unique thing, and we've got great college scouts who go and tell us. And honestly, sometimes in these interviews, we ask them, "Hey, what went into that decision to go there?" We ask them straight out to tell us, and obviously that's not a perfect science because they'll shape it the way they want to.
Yeah,
but,
and they're coached up.
And a lot of times it's not what they say; it's how they say it.
Agreed.
And when they're prepared. You know when they're giving you the whatever he and his agent wrote down the week before.
That's great. I got the kid raised by the FBI dad, Kevin, sitting next to me, so he's pretty good at
we're not going to draft John Gotti, okay? unless he's a blue chipper. But in not exactly knowing what a general manager does at the combine. I know there's film watching, you watch the drills and everything. I'm going to guess your favorite part and your strength are the interviews. Am I right?
Honestly, no.
Really?
I love the interviews in terms of the information gathering, just sitting there. But I try and run the room where I don't actually talk a lot. I shake their hand, bring them in the room, and let my staff do their job. Some of the best organizations I've been around, I'll name the Cleveland Guardians. I've been in meetings with Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff, and if they're with their staff, you wouldn't know that they were the most powerful people. I always look up to people like that and respect them. So I'd almost want the player to not know that I was the general manager, and just getting really good questions from our group, which we talk about beforehand. So I don't really need the self-gratulation to be the one to ask them. I'm just sitting there reading body language, seeing what the things like. So I do love it from an information gathering standpoint, but
you're non-obvious.
Yeah, you're
the captain of non-obvious.
Yeah, that's what I try.
That's what I'm saying is that we're not. You ain't looking for back pats.
Yeah.
But, you have to enjoy the stimulation of that moment, sitting back on a question, They set it up right to where you want to go. Bam, you come in there, you got an answer. He's either on the team or he's not.
Totally. It's great. And
That's awesome.
Obviously, I get to step in when time comes, and I can't. There's a guy tonight where I'm got to make sure that I get the snap in and feel better because I cannot wait to ask him this question. His film was really good. He's such a versatile player, and I'm just so curious to see how he sees himself.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing for me to view him a certain way, but I want to see the role that he sees in himself. Can't wait for it. Can't wait for the drills. I look forward to everything.
That's Travis Hunter, right?
Man, I was just saying earlier.
Holy cow, with that guy.
You know, when you get your names early in the year, you start saying goodbye to people once you're 4-1, 5-1, whatever your record is. Like, we're not going to be picking where this guy's going. It's the problem with the NFL at times, but
good problems to have.
It's fun learning about that guy, man, and what somebody's going to get in him.
He's a talented player.
Well, if you got interviews tonight, you better go rest so you can feel well. FaceTime back to home.
I will
check that box.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you'll lay on the sword for 5 other people during the course of the day. That's just who you are from an accountability standpoint, and we really appreciate the chat.
I appreciate you, dude.
Oh, you can
Sorry, I don't want to get you sick, man.
Faith, not fear.
Oh, man.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, general manager of the Minnesota Vikings from the Indy Combine. And following the general manager for the Vikings will be Arizona Cardinals offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, who spent a little more than a half-decade with the Minnesota Vikings as an offensive assistant. And last year was his first year as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and he talks about that and more from the Combine on KFAN.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Inspiration grows here. The Minneapolis Home and Garden Show runs March 5th through the 9th at the Minneapolis Convention Center. 5 days only to shop, compare, save with more than 500 home experts. Plan your visit and save $2 on tickets at homeandgardenshow.com. Homeandgardenshow.com.
Backfield, shotgun, back to pass, floats to the right, throws to the end zone, and caught. Touchdown, Arizona Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. with his 7th touchdown reception this season. It's a 15-yard touchdown, and lo and behold, the Arizona Cardinals have an 18-6 lead. All righty, here comes Drew Petzing, second-year offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals, and he was with the Minnesota Vikings as an offensive assistant, working myriad positions for 6 years. And from Indianapolis, we welcome in a man who, like one of our other guests today, Demetrius Washington, who's with the Vikings personnel department, was part of the Athletics 50 under 40. I don't think you get an award with it, but the Athletic named Drew as one of the top football people under the age of 40. So that's pretty cool.
It certainly is. Obviously, I fooled enough people to get on that list, so always happy about that.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, when you were at Wellesley High School in Massachusetts, did you ever think you'd be on the Athletics 50 under 40?
No, certainly not with my hairline and my athletic ability did I think that was coming in my future.
Well, I was wondering what happened with your hair, because you guys, your Cardinals played in so many tight games last year, including one at U.S. Bank Stadium. Some went the right way, some didn't. But, man, you guys, when you guys took losses, I mean, they were dirty losses, and I thought maybe you were pulling your hair out.
I keep it really short so I can't. That's part of the plan there. That's why I keep so low.
All right, let's get serious here, Drew Petzing. How'd your first year go? Just like friend to friend, first-year offensive coordinator. When we sat here last year, it was like, this is super cool. Well, the novelty's worn off. Now you're in the grind of the business of that job. How did it go?
I think you still enjoy it. I think that's kind of the fun part about the job. It's one of the reasons you get into coaching. I don't think that wears off as you go. I think the joy of being able to put a plan together, to work together towards a common goal, all the things that go into game planning and going out there on Sunday and trying to let it rip. I think certainly still felt that, had a little bit more success doing it this year, but really enjoy the job, who I'm doing it with. It's been a special experience.
You have to play the kind of the hand that you're dealt, right? Like certain positions, especially the quarterback position. Kyler Murray, good year, up and down, I think, like anybody else. But at the same time, what about him does he do well, or that you've been trying to use and take advantage of with his talent set?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that he does so many things well, and that's one of the reasons he's so fun to work with. I think the other side of that is, to me, and I've said this to a number of people that make my job enjoyable, is he loves the game, he's super competitive, and he works really hard. And anytime you get a player like that with his ability level, it's fun to go in there in the lab and try to put it together and go out and compete and go win games. So, but it is a dual threat quarterback. He sees the field really well, operates the offense at a really high level, really can do it all from that standpoint. So, there's always, as you said, like there's an up and down to every season. There's things you want to work on and get better at, but really pleased with where he's at and how he's kind of taken to the offense and taken to the team.
I know watching the film going into our matchup, James Conner really stood out. He's, a big man. Right, he wears number 6, but he's a big guy. How important is he to this offense, and how important has he been to helping Kyler Murray kind of not just be the run pass guy, but he can just sit back and throw?
Yeah, I can't speak enough about James just in terms of what he brings to the offense from a scheme standpoint. I mean, as you said, watching him play the game, he's an old school back. He's a guy that gets lathered up 20, 25 carries, can affect the game with the ball in his hands out of the backfield, and he is a hard guy to tackle. You see guys, it's like they almost have second thoughts as they go to make that final decision to tackle him, and I think that's what he brings to our offense, kind of that attitude along with the offensive line and so many other players out there. And then from a leadership standpoint, I mean, what he's been through throughout his life, what he's been through in his career, obviously a cancer survivor early in his career at Pitt there in college. Like, he just has such a unique perspective and does such a great job embracing that role in our building. So a really special player who's been fun to work with.
I'm going to go back to Kyler for a second, because like middle of the season in a fantasy football world, doing 9 to noon on KFAN, I would hear, well, Kyler, look at his numbers, ain't that great, whatever, doesn't have a ton of touchdowns, stuff like that. And I would contend, because I'm always pulling for you, so therefore, if I get into that true media thing to memorize numbers or watch Viking stuff, well, I'm going to, spend 15 minutes seeing what my guys are doing. And I would contend that Kyler Murray, this is with all due respect, it's not like he was irresponsible, but he was as responsible with the ball as I think I've ever seen him. And do you see it that way?
Absolutely. I think he does a great job. Taking care of the football is the number one thing we got to do as an offense, right? And I think that is decision making. It's the way I call it. And from a quarterback's perspective, it's where the ball's going and why. And I think as you look throughout a game and throughout the season, he did a phenomenal job of doing that. Are there plays he's going to want back? Are there calls that I'm going to want back? Absolutely. But I think overall and as a whole, I'm never going to look at it and be like, hey, your stat line wasn't good enough in that game. Yep. It's going to say, hey, based on the way the game was played, did you give us the best chance to win based on how you played? That's how we approach every game, and really at all the positions. I think that's so important at the quarterback position that you don't fall in love with stats and you don't fall in love with some of those things, because doing that is not in the best interest of the team a lot of times. And I think that's something as a coach that you have to preach and be about, because out there in the world, that's what gets talked about. But in the building, we can't focus on that, or we're not focusing on the right things.
Drew Petzing, offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals, spent 6 years with the Minnesota Vikings working a myriad offensive positions.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., right? The rookie campaign. What did you see out of him, and what do you expect out of him this year?
I think you saw a lot of what we expected in terms of just like understanding and working at the game at such a high level. Like his knowledge of the sport, his attention to detail, his desire to come in and move around the formation, take on different roles in our offense, I thought was really good. Certainly, and I know he even said this, like the adjustment to how he was getting defended was probably a little bit different than what he saw in college. A little bit more press, a little bit more man. People being a little bit more physical at the top of the route or at the release point. I thought you saw, especially there towards that second half of the season, him take some major strides in terms of how he's getting off the line, how he's making contested catches at the catch point. I had 8 touchdowns for us in the red zone, so certainly an area of the field that he showed up in a major way. And just based on kind of who he is and how I see him taking that into year 2, I only expect that to continue to grow based on his work ethic and understanding of the game.
Your division is tough. I mean, into the Rams with McVay. You guys are improving. I think you won 8 times last year. You guys had a toughness to you last year that I haven't seen the Arizona Cardinals have in a little while, with all due respect. And Leslie Frazier, Mike McDonald, and Seattle. They can be a tough beat too. But your division's it's good, but it's getting better by the second, isn't it?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, you look around the division from a coaches and talent standpoint in terms of the way the product that people are putting on the field. It's a really hard fought division. There's going to be great football games. I think that's ultimately what the NFL wants for all 32 teams. And one of our calling cards, as you just hit on, is going to be we have to outplay everybody. Like, that has to show up on tape. You have to feel that anytime you step on the field with us. Something we talk about in the meeting room, something we want to show up in practice and on game day. I think it did, and it certainly needs to continue.
Drew, when it comes to keeping things fresh, it's like when we talked to Pat Shurmur yesterday, Tuesday, first day at the Combine, about Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, stuff like that. He said something that was interesting because it's his first run back into college football in a quarter century, and he's like, it takes a while to get the fluidity of the game, to have it become fluid to you, and it sounds like he feels very comfortable with that. But I bring it to you because last year was your first year doing that, coordinating offense, and offense inside and out, but now you're on the sideline with the headset, calling it, doing the whole thing. Do you see it that way, that it takes a while to have it become fluid, calling games and changing game plans and keeping teams off balance?
Yes and no. I think if you're diligent about your job, you're always trying to improve and find little areas of what you do and how you do it to be better at it, whether that's how we game plan during the week, how we communicate on game day, how I call the game. So whether that's fluidity or experience, there's some value in it. Do I think that I was not giving us a chance in year one and week two? No, I felt really confident when I was out there calling plays with the plans we put together, but I always feel like the more I'm going to do something, the better I'm going to be at it, because I'm going to try to be really diligent to take feedback from the people around me, look at what's going on around the league, talk to other people like Kevin, who you just had on here a second ago, and make sure that I'm improving myself, because that's what we ask the players to do, right? We talk about all the guys on our roster and what we're going to ask them to do in the offseason, how we're going to speak to them about going into next season. If I'm not doing that as a coach, I'm not doing my job for them. So I think that's a really big part of the job. Certainly fluidity is a part of that.
Is it difficult putting together a game plan?
No, I mean, yes and no. I think it depends a little bit on where you're at, who your opponent is. The better the opponent, the harder it tends to be to put the plan together and feel really good about it. The more injuries you're dealing with, the harder it can be, things like that. Right. But I think at the end of the day, it's a process that I was fortunate enough to watch some really talented people go through for a number of years early in my career to kind of shape who I am and what I believe as a coach. So certainly it's something at this point I feel like I know the challenge that goes with it, but it's enjoyable. I feel really confident in how we do it, and certainly want that.
All right, couple more for Drew Petzing, offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals. Pete?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed in watching is with you, the tight end isn't dead. Trey McBride, I thought, especially it seemed like against your divisional opponents, stepped up and was a big part of it. So talk about how do you see the tight end position and how do you use it?
Yeah, McBride's fantastic.
That's a great question. I think ultimately, and I've said this in the room, is players define who the key components of our offense are going to be. And that's always going to be the case. And Trey has certainly done that over the last 2 years in terms of his development and growth as a player, as a teammate. What he brings the offense. And the nice thing about the tight ends is all of the mismatches you can create, especially with a guy like Trey. You can split him out as a single receiver and he can beat a lot of corners. Certainly he's going to beat a safety or linebacker. All of a sudden he's in line blocking, or he's involved in the keeper game or the screen game. Then he's stretching the field. Then he's, again, blocking or sealing across the formation in the run game. And I think when you have a guy who can do so many different things at a high level, it makes it really hard on a defense to take him away. Because it's not like, hey, we're just going to cover this guy right here with this person all game and this is how we're going to do things. It involves so many adjustments on their part, because what if he's in line? What if he's in the backfield? What if he's split out? What if he's down the field? What if it's a catch and run? And he does so many of those things well, and it's such a big part of who we are.
Hey, Drew, lastly, from the first day at the Combine, either chatting with ESPN draft analysts or, some personnel people on the side, we just keep hearing how deep the draft is with running backs, and that, hey, on Saturday, rounds 5, 6, or 7, you're going to fall into a back who can start in certain systems. Maybe 30 drafted, somewhere around that number, like 2017. Do you see it that way? Do you see it from what you know now, with more work to do, undoubtedly, and meetings and top 30 and stuff like that? Do you see it as a deep running back class?
I'd be remiss if I gave you an answer to that, honestly, because I haven't gotten there yet. For us as coaches, really the end of the season, the first two things we're going to do is self-scout and free agency. So really, this is kind of the week before coming to the Combine is when we start to jump into some of that stuff and start to look at the college players and start to stack the board and go through that process. So honestly, I couldn't tell you whether there's 20 of them that are going to be Hall of Famers or there's 5. But generally, where there's smoke, there's fire, as they say. So So you got to believe a little bit of what they're saying. So certainly looking forward to seeing these running backs here this week.
Well, lastly, part two, and I brought this up with Stefanski, and it's, you guys know so many people around the league or in college football that you can call so many people and figure out where the bones are buried on players A through Z. But when it's somebody like Pat Shurmur, who has spoken with Kevin said they chatted, and Pat said they chatted, and you know Pat incredibly well, and he has a high level of respect for you. All right, Travis Hunter's probably going to be gone long before number 16, but nevertheless, there are other receivers in the draft. How great is it having somebody you can absolutely trust, like Pat Shurmur, to talk about some of these receivers or whatever, because it's not always the case that you can completely trust people.
I think the trust factor is huge, and understanding what they, where their perspective comes from, how they evaluate players, what they think of different things. So, obviously having coached with Pat and have so much respect for him as a coach, as a person, you're going to get an honest answer, and maybe a little bit more detail than you might get from someone I'm cold calling or I haven't worked with. And certainly that's something that helps me and helps us throughout the draft process based on the relationships I've built throughout my career.
It was a lot of fun watching your offense last year and kind of following you guys from afar. Awesome job. Really happy for you. Best of luck next year.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Drew Petzing, offensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals, formerly with the Minnesota Vikings for more than a half decade. We thank Drew for the conversation. We get local when we return. Weekly guest Ben Gessling from the Star Tribune joins us from the National Football League Scouting Combine 2025 in Indianapolis on KFAN.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.